Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a list of books that I think are incredibly fast-paced, great page turners, great books for picking up if you're looking for something you can read over the weekend, you just want to dive into a book, maybe you've got some readathons coming up, and you're just looking for something that you can dive into and get invested in and captivated by. I like to read a mix of both young adult and adult fantasy, and I find that the majority of the time you're going to get these good old time kind of books more often in young adult, because adult, we just so often see these big epic worlds that take a lot of time to develop. There's so many details, but I do have a couple of adult science fiction fantasy books on the list, and the first one would be Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This one is a little bit wicked, but it is just so delicious. It's just such a great moral grayness, and I had so much fun with this. If you're looking for a book that has characters that you probably shouldn't be rooting for, but you maybe aren't even rooting for them, you're just, one of them maybe is not as good as the other, but they're honestly both awful, that's this book. It is a split timeline that is not going to be to everyone's liking. I personally really enjoyed the utilization of a fractured timeline, so it's not just back and forth between present and past. You actually get a lot of different timelines, and the way that it all comes together at the end, I found really exciting. I think it was interesting. It definitely takes a sec to get accustomed to that, but once you do, and you start piecing everything together, I think that just makes the experience so much more entertaining. And the main characters in this story are quite terrible, I must say, but you kind of can't get enough of them. So the setup is that we follow these two individuals who used to be really good friends, and then in present day, they want to kill each other, and you really don't know what happened. So that's part of the reading experience, is finding out what led to these two despising one another and deciding whose side you're on. Next up on the list, and the first young adult series, would be the Falling Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. This was one of the first series that I read when I was getting back into reading after the craziness that was working my way through college. So this was, I think, a great series for me to get back into reading because it is ridiculous. It is so absurd. So you have a few different kingdoms, and you are following the young heirs from each of the kingdoms and how they are all intertwined. And a bunch of different people at different points in the story are falling in love with each other, and then they're sworn enemies, or they're sworn enemies, and then somebody kills somebody that somebody else loves, but then they are falling in love with this person, and then they end up having to be married to this person. It is so dramatic, but it's like popcorn, you know? Sometimes you don't even really want more of it, but you just keep eating it anyway because you're like, I kind of can't stop. The drama is just so over the top. And if you are looking for something like that, if you're looking for a fantasy world that is basically a reality TV show in a book, that's what this series is. Next up, we have Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is more of a dystopian story, and it's our world, but in the future where the cloud is sentient. It is known as the Thunderhead, and it basically takes care of everybody. There's really no fear of death anymore. We have advanced medicine and technology to a point where we really don't have anything that we are afraid of. No wars, no disease, nothing except the threat of overpopulation. You've probably heard of the premise of this one. It sounds absurd. I know it sounds absurd. You definitely have to suspend disbelief, because the solution that mankind comes up with to deal with the threat of overpopulation is a designated, revered group of individuals known as Scythes who get to decide who dies, and when they kill someone, the essentially medical advancements won't kick in to heal that person. So they're actually dead. It's called gleaning. And we follow two young individuals that are apprenticing to become Scythes. They really don't want to become Scythes, but kind of just sort of the situation they find themselves in. The book definitely has a morbid premise, but I think has a pretty good sense of humor, which you wouldn't necessarily expect based off of that premise. But I really like dark humor. This one is not extreme in that, but it does occasionally throw something in that I found quite humorous. So I think that makes it so much easier to get through. And also there's a lot of questions of like, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be a person? What is the meaning of life? It has a lot of those sorts of questions presented without feeling pretentious in any way. I was hooked from the very beginning, and then I didn't want to put it down. And that definitely is true of the second one as well. And I think the third one, because the third one you're like, what is going on? And then you're done. And there's a lot of mixed opinions about that third one, but overall, still highly recommend. Next up, we have Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. So many of you know that I recommend books even if I don't personally enjoy them. And of course, it's all based off of what is subjective, what you like, what you don't like. This book had a lot of training sequences. So we follow a character where something traumatic happens at the beginning of the story, and then they are seeking revenge. And to get that revenge, they gotta hustle, they gotta get stronger, they gotta be the biggest and the baddest, and that's what they're working towards. So a lot of the book is them working toward that. And I was not always particularly captivated by that, but if you like watching characters try to get stronger, if you like watching action, well, not watching, if you like reading those things, if you like reading a character who has a lot of battle sequences, whether they're skirmishes, practices, or full on, oh my gosh, everything's going wrong, all of a sudden things are going down, if you like that sort of pacing, you're not going to want to put this one down. Next up is a book that, as much as the term guilty pleasure obviously implies that you kind of feel guilty reading it, enjoying it, but it's just pleasurable. I don't usually like using that term because I don't want anybody to feel guilty, but that concept I feel like perfectly aligns with Serpent and Dove because this book is pure entertainment. It is so ridiculous. It's a story about, it's kind of French-inspired fantasy where people aren't really big fans of witches, and our main character is a witch, and our other main character is a witch hunter. And through some ridiculous circumstances, these two end up being married because there was no better solution to the problem that is presented. So they're married, and he does not know that she's a witch. She obviously knows he's a witch hunter. And so she just basically, you guys have probably all seen Read with Cindy talk about this book, so I probably don't need to go too in-depth with it. If you have not, I'll have it linked below because it is very entertaining. But she basically sings dirty songs as a way to gain some freedom. It's really, it's very silly, but when I read it, I was very entertained. There were a lot of times that I'm like, wait a second though, but if this is something that you can do with that, with the magic, then I feel like you should be able to do this too. You can't, I would recommend not thinking too hard. Last on the list is a slightly older YA fantasy. That would be the Grisha Trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. This one, it's funny because it has waves where sometimes everybody is loving it and everyone's obsessed, and then it dips down and everybody hates it, thinks Alina is really stupid, and everybody hates the love square that comes up in the story, and then everybody starts to be like, actually, I didn't hate it. I read it and I thought it was kind of a good time. And then it goes through these waves. You understand how that works. So I will admit, I'm a big fan. I really like this series. I've read it twice now. I liked it even more the second time around. I do think that it has a lot of certain tropes that are a little bit more common of slightly older young adult books. Obviously, if they are slightly older, those tropes would not have been overdone at that point, but at this point, it does a little bit feel overdone. So you follow a character who is basically a chosen one type. They discover that they may have powers that can defeat the Shadowfold. So that is an area of land that is dividing their country, and that area of land is shrouded in darkness, and there are these creatures there, and her powers may have the ability to save everybody from this problem. I do think that it is very entertaining, and if you pick it up, you could probably finish it maybe in a sitting, in a weekend, you can get through it pretty quickly. I do have a lot of other books that I think are great for this very topic, but I had so many that I decided to break it up so I could go a little bit more in depth with the books rather than such a quick rundown. So anyway, I will have reviews linked in the description bar if I have any for the ones mentioned. So if you want more in-depth thoughts, then you can check those out. I'll have those future videos up soon. But anyway, let me know some books that you think are incredibly fast-paced, that you just can't put down. I would love to know. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.